Just a quick comment because I've watched, like everyone, a lot of different news, but I did watch Abby Phillips last night with Scott Jennings. He calls these convoys, he says, what's happening is this is almost a form of political vigilantism.
Yep.
What do you think
Yeah.
about that statement? That to me was
Mm.
pretty powerful.
Yeah. I mean, look, there have been instances in other cities of assaults on these officers. And then
Mhm.
in Texas, we saw some detainees were killed. Not clear exactly what happened in that instance, but this is what happened. Now we don't know what she did. Again, I'm super
No, no,
curious
no,
to know
no,
what she did
no,
that
no.
morning. But yeah, see what
Right. Okay.
thoughts on how some communities have received the presence of ICE officers with whether you want to call it being vigilantes or whatever. Thoughts on that? Because you said the people in that neighborhood were making a statement, and they were, but thoughts about
Mhm.
the methods by which people have done that.
Yeah, I will say for this scenario where the shooting happened, to me, the long shot of it looked like just a few neighbors all outside wondering what ICE was doing. I think different than when you've seen scenes in Chicago where JB Pritzker and the mayor were very clear, maybe in the same way the Minnesota lawmakers of not wanting ICE. But I mean, Chicago runs a little bit different than the Minnesota nice folks. Um, I mean, but it differs, right? Because the ICE exists. ICE is right down the street from me here in Washington, D.C., but we're used to federal law enforcement officers all over. We're used to so many police. And I also think it differs on where you're from. You said Atlanta suburbs. I'm from the Atlanta suburbs too. The most engagement I had when I lived in the suburbs of Atlanta was the police directing traffic after a football game. So you also have to take into effect that there are some of these communities that have had consistent run-ins with police officers, and now you layer law enforcement on top of it. So there's a lot more tension that's there that's different than how I grew up or how you live. There's those things just don't happen in the
Yeah.
suburbs of Atlanta. And I mean, look, a police officer comes up to me. I was raised black and in the South. You comply and you get out of the car. To me, there are just certain situations where it feels a bit more gray.
Larry, thank you for that. Larry.
Yeah. Um, and by the way, thanks for pointing out Chicago and Illinois because we've seen again protesters and agitators getting in the way of ICE vehicles and using their own vehicles to try to threaten. We've had ICE officers shot at. This didn't happen in a vacuum yesterday. The reaction from these ICE officers, number one, and number two, again, we live in a civilization. We live in a constitutional republic where the people of Minnesota who don't like ICE, they are very well represented right now. From the mayor to the attorney general to the governor, they don't need to be in the street blocking their activities. And one last thing about that neighborhood where ICE was, and Macy spoke very eloquently about the neighborhood, wanting to know and wanting to be activated about ICE in their neighborhood, and they didn't like it. What about that neighbor who didn't get out on the street? The neighbor who was very concerned about the illegal immigrant criminal element in their neighborhood, who has been worried about potential crime or actual crime that has taken place. They didn't get out on the streets because they looked out the window, they saw that ICE was there, and they said, thank God someone's actually doing something about the criminal illegal alien element in my neighborhood. That person in that neighborhood deserves to have a voice too.
Yeah. Jane, thank you.
They say that something that's easy is like a walk in the park. Well, easier than a walk in the park, hit the subscribe button, be part of the two-way community, never miss an episode, be part of our conversations. Thank you for your service to America.
And don't forget, you can now listen to the morning meeting and Two Way Tonight on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.